In the cold, damp stone walls of the Tower of London, a young woman awaits her fate. She is just 21, a princess by birth, but now a prisoner accused of treason. Her half-sister, the Queen of England, believes she is a threat, a heretic, a magnet for rebels. Every creak of a door, every footstep in the corridor, could signal her own walk to the executioner's block. The same fate that befell her mother, Anne Boleyn, on these very grounds. Disinherited, declared illegitimate, and now detained, her life hangs by a thread. This isn't the story of a condemned traitor. This is the story of survival against all odds. This is the unlikely, astonishing, and treacherous path to the throne for the woman who would become one of England's greatest monarchs, Elizabeth I. To understand Elizabeth's incredible journey, we must first go back to her father, the larger-than-life king, Henry VIII. Henry's desperate quest for a male heir shattered the religious and political landscape of England. After 2 decades of marriage to Catherine of Aragon, which produced only one surviving child, a daughter named Mary, Henry became obsessed with Anne Boleyn. He convinced himself his first marriage was cursed and sought an annulment from the Pope. When the Pope refused, Henry took a step that no one could have predicted. He broke with the Roman Catholic Church, declared himself the supreme head of the Church of England, and married a pregnant Anne. On September 7, 1533, Anne gave birth, but the child was not the longed-for son. It was a girl, Elizabeth. Initially, Elizabeth was celebrated. She was the legitimate heir, displacing her older half-sister Mary, who was now declared illegitimate and cast out from court. For 2.5 years, Elizabeth lived the life of a cherished princess, but her world was built on the fragile foundation of her father's affections and her mother's ability to produce a son. When Anne Boleyn failed to provide a male heir after a series of miscarriages, Henry's eye began to wander once more. Anne's enemies at court, sensing her vulnerability, pounced. In a shocking turn of events, she was accused of treason, adultery, and even incest. The charges were almost certainly fabricated, a convenient excuse for Henry to rid himself of a wife he no longer wanted. In May 1536, Anne Boleyn was beheaded. Within days, Henry married Jane Seymour. And just like that, the 2-year-old Princess Elizabeth went from heir to outcast. She, too, was declared illegitimate, stripped of her title, and removed from the line of succession. Elizabeth's childhood became a masterclass in survival. She was raised in the households of her various stepmothers, learning to be seen but not heard, to be clever but not threatening. She received a brilliant education, becoming fluent in Latin, Greek, French, and Italian. Her mind was her sharpest weapon, and she learned to wield it with caution and precision. She watched as her father married and discarded wives, as her young half-brother Edward was born. And as the court's political tides shifted with dangerous speed, she learned a crucial lesson: to trust no one completely and to keep her own counsel. Her relationship with her half-siblings, Mary and Edward, was complex. They were united by their royal blood, but divided by their mothers and, most dangerously, their faith. Mary was a devout Catholic, Edward a fervent Protestant, and Elizabeth navigated a careful middle path. When Henry VIII died in 1547, his 9-year-old son, Edward VI, ascended the throne. Under Edward's Protestant regime, Elizabeth's position improved. She was, after all, a fellow Protestant. But her troubles were far from over. As a teenager, she went to live with her final stepmother, Catherine Parr, who had quickly remarried a man named Thomas Seymour. Seymour was ambitious and reckless. He engaged in inappropriate, flirtatious behavior with the young Elizabeth, including entering her bedchamber in his nightgown and engaging in rough horseplay. Whether it was a calculated attempt to get close to the throne or simple impropriety, it was a scandal waiting to happen. Catherine Parr eventually sent Elizabeth away. After Catherine's death in childbirth, Seymour's ambitions spiraled. He plotted to marry Elizabeth and seize power, a scheme that ended with his arrest and execution for treason. Elizabeth herself was interrogated. At just 15, she faced intense questioning, her loyalty to the crown under scrutiny. It was her first taste of political peril, and she handled it with a composure that defied her years, denying all involvement and emerging with her reputation and her head intact. Edward's reign was short. He died of illness at just 15, and his attempt to bypass both his sisters and name a Protestant cousin, Lady Jane Grey, as his successor failed spectacularly. The people rallied to Henry VIII's true-born daughter, Mary. After just 9 days, Jane Grey was deposed, and Mary I became queen. And for Elizabeth, the danger escalated dramatically. Mary was determined to return England to the Catholic faith. She saw Protestantism as a heresy that had destroyed her mother, delegitimized her, and damned the soul of the nation. Elizabeth, as a prominent Protestant and the next in line to the throne, became a living symbol of everything Mary despised. To the Queen, Elizabeth was a constant threat, a natural focal point for any Protestant rebellion. Mary's paranoia was not unfounded. In 1554, a rebellion led by Sir Thomas Wyatt erupted, aiming to depose Mary and some whispered, to place Elizabeth on the throne. Though there was no concrete evidence linking Elizabeth to the plot, Mary's advisors were convinced of her guilt. The order was given. Elizabeth was arrested and taken, by barge, to the Tower of London. As she approached the infamous Traitor's Gate, she refused to enter, protesting her innocence. For a terrifying moment, she sat on the wet stone steps in the rain, a princess defying a queen. But defiance could only last so long. She was imprisoned in the same fortress where her mother had met her end. For weeks, Elizabeth lived in constant fear. She wrote a desperate letter to Mary, proclaiming her loyalty and begging for an audience. She even scored lines under her signature with her fingernail, hoping to prevent anyone from adding a forged confession below it. Her life was spared, not by her sister's mercy, but by a lack of evidence and the political risk of executing a popular heir. Instead of the block, she was sent to Woodstock, where she was kept under house arrest for nearly a year. She was isolated, watched constantly, her every word and letter scrutinized. This period of confinement forged her character. It taught her patience, resilience, and the art of appearing non-threatening while concealing a will of iron. She learned to guard her thoughts, especially on the critical matter of religion. When pressed, she would offer ambiguous answers, a skill that would define her reign. Her famous response when questioned about her belief in the transubstantiation, the Catholic doctrine of the Eucharist, was a masterpiece of evasion. Christ was the word that spake it. He took the bread and brake it. And what his words did make it, that I believe, and take it. It revealed nothing, and it saved her. Meanwhile, Queen Mary's reign was becoming a catastrophe. Her marriage to Philip II of Spain was deeply unpopular, dragging England into Spain's foreign wars and leading to the humiliating loss of Calais, England's last territory on the continent. Even more damaging was her brutal religious persecution. In her zealous quest to stamp out Protestantism, she had nearly 300 people burned at the stake for heresy, earning her the grim nickname, Bloody Mary. This campaign of terror backfired, turning many English people against both Catholicism and the Queen herself. Mary, childless and sick, grew increasingly isolated and bitter. As her health failed, the nation began to look to the future. And the future was Elizabeth. On November 17, 1558, Queen Mary died. According to legend, Elizabeth was sitting under an oak tree at Hatfield House when the royal messengers arrived to bring her the news. They knelt before her and proclaimed, "Your Majesty." Elizabeth is said to have fallen to her knees and quoted the Bible in Latin. "This is the Lord's doing. It is marvelous in our eyes." After a lifetime spent in the shadows, navigating plots, imprisonment, and the constant threat of death, the disinherited daughter of Anne Boleyn was now Queen of England. At 25 years old, she inherited a kingdom that was religiously divided, bankrupt, and demoralized. The challenges were immense. But Elizabeth had been forged in the fires of adversity. She had survived her father's tyranny, her brother's court, and her sister's prison. She had learned to be a politician, a strategist, and a survivor. The unlikely rise was complete. Now, the reign could begin. The age of Elizabeth was dawning. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to our channel for more stories from history. We'll see you next time.